Hey everyone, it's the Geeky Gamer. Growing up, I was a Mario kid. Mario Kart Wii, Super Mario Galaxy, Super Paper Mario. Yeah, I had a Wii, everyone had a Wii. If you didn't have Wii, then look again, because yes you did. Even with only a few Mario games to my name, I was a fiend for looking at the wiki and learning as much as I could about the franchise. And that hasn't slowed down, I'm still a huge Mario fan. Sonic is a different story. I had only one Sonic game growing up, on the Wii. It wasn't Colors, it wasn't Unleashed, it wasn't Black Knight. It was Secret Rings. Even as a kid, I knew it sucked. Granted, I first played it with the Wiimote vertical, but even after giving it another shot with a horizontal Wiimote, I ditched it in the middle of the first world. A motion-controlled Sonic game was a terrible idea. Other than that, my few bits of interaction with the Sonic franchise were playing Sonic 1 on an online emulator and only beating Green Hill, watching Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog as a kid because it was on Netflix, playing as Sonic characters in flat fighters like Official Smash, Smash Slash 2, and Rivals of Aether mods, listening to the music, loving the Snapcube dubs,
I've come to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog's out.
and Jets memes,
I just love Latina's Sonic.
wanting to watch the movies, and having a fair bit of basic knowledge about the series. I kinda wanted to get into the franchise more, but I hadn't quite found the spark yet. That is, until 2024, the year of Shadow. Sonic hype was through the roof that year, between Sonic X Shadow Generations and the third movie. I started out the year still on the outskirts and hearing complaints about the Knuckles series, but by fall, I had made up my mind. It was time for me to truly become a Sonic fan. Real quick, before we start this journey, while I did make a new 3D model recently to use as a Ransona and such, we need something special for this video. Meet Geeky the cat. No, I'm not a furry, I just think I should have a Mobian Sona for Sonic related stuff. And yes, I call them Mobians. Sega, please just call the islands they live on the Mobius Archipelago or something, so we can stop calling them just anthropomorphic animals. Alright, let's begin this journey of fandom, starting with...
Meow?
Sonic Movie 3 was coming up, and my friends and I were planning to see it in theaters. In retrospect, I kinda regret that now that I know how much Paramount sucks. I wish Sega could switch to a different company to make the movies and stuff with. Anyways, I had to catch up on the rest of the movieverse first. Sonic Movie 1 is a pretty good start, though it doesn't have much from the games. Probably a good entry point for new audiences, but might be a bit disappointing for invested fans. Ben Schwartz makes a great younger interpretation of Sonic with an adorable and much improved model, while Jim Carrey absolutely kills it as Robotnik. Oh yeah, and the human characters are there too, but we all love Agent Stone. An actually good video game movie? Nice start. Now release the ugly cut, I want to know what Tails look like pre-redesign. Movie 2 had the new audiences captured, so time to introduce more from the games. It was great to keep Colleen O'Shaughnessy as Tails instead of getting some celebrity voice actor. Tails feels so authentic with his usual voice, plus he gets an adorable design and great interactions with Sonic. Idris Elba is awesome as Knuckles, and this interpretation probably helped with fixing Knuckles in the games. He's naive, not stupid. We get more lore, more game elements like the Emerald, Supersonic, and Gun, and plenty of great interaction. Side note, I liked the wedding subplot. Sure, it's out of place, but it's all worth it for Rachel's Barracuda scene. Cleanly dismounting a drifting golf cart before it explodes behind her is pure aura. The Knuckles series was pretty fun, just keep in mind it's more like Wade and Knuckles. It's just a roller coaster. Within 3 episodes, they go from a comedic rescue to both chaotic and heartwarming moments with the Whipple family to the absolute acid trip that is the Knuckles backstory rock opera. And half the series is focused on bowling. Just go in expecting a wacky side story in the Sonic movieverse and you'll have a good time. Finally, Movie 3, the one that embraced the games the most, being a pretty close adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2. I was skeptical about Gerald, and it was probably mostly to let Jim Carrey run wild with 2 characters, but it worked out pretty well as a deviation from the source material. Shadow was really well written, and Keanu Reeves was an amazing choice to voice him, though it felt like he wasn't in it quite enough. I made a post about this on my Blue Sky, but Movie Shadow might be the only Shadow, besides maybe Archie Shadow, to actually consider his Sonic a friend, since they started to understand each other more after their talk on the moon about grief. Hopefully they won't forget this, and hopefully Shadow is amnesiac again in the next installment they meet in. And I'm excited for Movie 4. Amy, Metal Sonic, and a whole army of medals? Bring it on. With the movies all watched, it was time for the biggest part of this journey, the games. I decided to skip the 2D games, they didn't interest me, I wanted to jump right into 3D. I got almost all the main 3D games set up, and last January I started with... Sonic had a rough transition into 3D. Nah, this is good. That line is only valid if you count all the other 3D attempts before Adventure like 3D Blast and Sonic R. I decided to emulate the original Dreamcast version here because of the documented issues with the ports. Sonic Adventure was a good restart point for the franchise, bringing a whole new style and new lore. The animations may be awkward and the voice acting may be a bit stilted, but it's some old charm. I definitely like the freedom within levels of the adventure formula, and the characters are pretty fun to play. Sonic is standard and not crazy fast, but that's probably good to start out with. Tails' levels are very similar to Sonic's and decently fun. Knuckles' treasure hunting levels are immediately at their best. It's all downhill from here. Amy's hammer needs to fully come back in 3D. Using it to launch herself in these chase levels is really unique. Gamma's got some interesting gameplay focused on shooting combos to refill the timer, and a beautifully tragic story. Then there's Big. Yeah, the fishing kinda sucks, but you only have to do it 4 times, then catch Froggy at Chaos 6. The adventure fields were a neat idea, but they didn't have enough in them to make them very worthwhile after the story's done, at least not until the DX port added the missions. The interweaving stories are really cool, and they all tie together on the egg carrier and at the end. The first 3D Supersonic fight is a bit jank with the collision and keeping up speed, but still as glorious as ever to go all out as an invincible Super Hog. Though in Adventure, it's ruined a little bit by the first phase of Perfect Chaos playing Open Your Heart, and the second phase playing Perfect Chaos Revival. It'd be at its absolute best if you had a phase as normal Sonic with Revival, then go super for the final phase with Open Your Heart. Oh well, early installment weirdness. Overall, SA1 was a great start to the modern era. It's a bit basic, but it's a certified classic that set the groundwork for most of the 3D games going forward. But it has an even more beloved sequel. I didn't really like it. Sonic Adventure 2, it's bigger, it's better, in some ways. The story is great, with the introductions of Shadow and Rouge and dual hero and dark stories that converge at the end. The presentation is much improved, the models and animations look a lot better. But the gameplay... Sonic and Shadow play pretty well. They didn't screw up with the base speed gameplay, but it's quite a bit harder than SA1. Tails and Eggman's mech gameplay builds on Gamma, but isn't great. The mechs are big and clunky, especially with steering, and if you fall off at all, you're dead if there's no platform below where you fell. Shame that this is Eggman's only playable appearance in a main 3D game. And then there's Knuckles and Rouge's treasure hunting gameplay. What happened here? Only tracking one treasure at a time when the stages are so much bigger? All their stages were miserable to play, with super dishonorable mentions to Rouge's Security Hall, Mad Space and Egg Quarters, and Knuckles' Meteor Herd, Death Chamber, and especially Aquatic Mine. You don't know hell until you're wandering this watery maze, not even knowing about the side room the last shard is in, all while being tortured by the fact that Hunted P did not cook, so you're listening to Aquatic Mine for 20 minutes straight! But things got really frustrating with the Bio Lizard. That fight was so janky, I got hit so much for no reason, this was the moment I gave up doing it fully legit and resorted to save states every time I made progress. And I used save states on Final Hazard too, I just wanted to finish this. Sorry, I can't enjoy this game that much when only a third of it is actually designed well, and even that third gets really hard at the end. Honestly, call that last bit a skill issue since this was only my second 3D Sonic and I might do better now, but the mechs and treasure hunting just suck. And no, I didn't touch the Chow Garden. Sonic Heroes has a lot of fun to it, but with a few flaws. The team gimmick is really good, it gives a chance for Tails and especially Knuckles to have more traditional Sonic gameplay, but still using their unique abilities. Well, not so unique, since there's 4 teams who all play mostly the same, which works well to let us play as a ton of characters. Shame this is the only playable mainline 3D outing for the Chaotix and Cream. Unfortunately, the game having 4 teams leads to you playing almost the exact same thing 4 times in order to finish the whole game. Team Sonic is a good standard run-through, Team Rose is the easy mode with less enemies and shorter levels, Team Chaotix is the weird one with special missions, and Team Dark is the worst because it spams tough enemies at you, like 3 armored egg hammers at once in Final Fortress. Better have a Team Blast ready. I didn't find the special stages hard, I beat them all first try. The tough part is getting the key and finishing the rest of the level without getting hit. I abused save states for that. The Egg Emperor fight kinda sucks with all 4 teams. Don't remember exactly why, but I remember it sucked. Metal Overlord might be my least favorite Supersonic fight, but that's because it felt super light on rings. But other than those few gripes, Heroes is pretty good. It's very bright and colorful, unlike our next game. I liked this one. Mostly. Yep, Shadow 05 is one of the ones I liked, and not Adventure 2. Largely because Shadow isn't as hard. I really like that you only drop some rings on hit instead of all, which is probably because this game is more combat focused. And I like the gunplay. It's fun to grab guns and unload from a distance, with most of them locking onto enemies like the homing attack. It's especially fun when most enemies in the area have the same guns so you can gather up a huge ammo supply. A lot of the levels are pretty good, and thankfully you can teleport between checkpoints, which helps with a lot of the missions. I didn't really have a problem with Lost Impact, only missed like 1 or 2 artificial chaos on the first path through and just had to go back to the start. The worst part of the game I played was the Sonic and Diablon fight. No boss should have that much invincibility time, and bouncing off Sonic to hit Diablon in the first phase is annoying. Black Doom and the Egg Dealer were much more fun fights. The real worst part of the game, which I didn't play, was the requirements to unlock the last story. I played through to visit every level at least once and get one ending from each of the 5 final levels, but I was not going to do that a second time just to get the other ending from each level. I grabbed a 100% save since the dolphin code wasn't working and went right into last story. Devil Doom was a good fight, but I have no idea why they'd put Eggman's confirmation about Shadow being the real one after 8 minutes. You'll beat the fight long before that. Yeah, sure, this game is edgy, but the movement is pretty good and the gunplay makes it a ton of fun. Just don't go for true 100%. Nothing is worth doing all 326 routes. I liked this one. I'll see myself out. Yep, I'm a heathen in Sonic fandom. I liked Sonic 06. Objectively, yes, it was a bit clunky and janky, but for me, it worked. I emulated the 360 version on Xenia with the DLC because I heard it fixed some bugs, and you'll never believe this, but I didn't have a single glitch. Okay, except for one time the UI turned low res for a bit, but other than that, I didn't have any glitches with big enough effects for me to notice. And because of that, I was free to see the good in this infamous game. Sonic and Shadow's gameplay is fine, if a bit clunkier than normal, and Shadow's levels have the same enemy spam issues as Team Dark's levels and Heroes. It's a good thing the bonus characters aren't played as much. Tails' fake ring bomb is bizarre, Knuckles' climbing is janky, Rouge is whatever, Omega is a bit interesting with his guns and hover, and Amy sucks with her short range and invisibility for some reason. I hear Blaze's gameplay is really good, but you barely get to try it out because of how little you play as her. But then there's Silver, who is really cool. Yes, he's slower, but his psychokinesis is an awesome gimmick, especially with how you progress. At first you'll be seeking out crates and stuff to throw, but as you go on, the props in the environment get scarcer, pushing you to learn how to grab enemy projectiles and throw them back, and to stun and pick up enemies to throw. Silver becomes a beast by the end of his campaign. I had a ton of fun grabbing a storm of bullets and missiles and shooting them back, or stunning and lifting groups of enemies and throwing them at others. A lot of the levels are actually pretty good, but there are a few lame bits. Silver's Dusty Desert Ball puzzle comes to mind, even though it only took me a couple tries, and End of the World sucks because of those magnetic eyes of Solaris. That gauntlet was the cause of most of my deaths. Oh, and then the boss fights literally just lure Silver towards physics objects and hit him after he picks them up. Overall, I can't hate Sonic 06, it's actually pretty good. Maybe I was just lucky, I didn't even get the infamous Wave Ocean loop-de-loop bug, but I had a great time with it. Give it another chance, folks, there's some stuff to love. I didn't like this one, and I really wanted to. I heard Unleashed was great except for the Werehog, and luckily I had a great new way to play it thanks to the release of Unleashed Recompiled. Too bad this game is brutal. The day stages start out fine, and it's fun whenever you get to just boost endlessly, but before long they start getting way too fast, and you need the reaction time of Sonic himself to react to oncoming obstacles, walls, and more. Especially when in 2D, those are the worst segments because you can't see what's coming at such high speeds. I'm somewhat willing to admit skill issue because this was my first boost formula game, but it still feels way too hard. Then there's the infamous night stages with the Werehog. It generally wasn't too bad, but I hated 3 things. 1, a single jump is too small, so you have to double jump for almost everything. Just make the single jump higher. 2, anytime you have to walk on thin platforms, especially the ones with spikes on the sides so you can't grab back on when you fall off. 3, enemies being massive damage sponges, even with strength upgrades. Oh, and then there's the Arid Sands Night Staircase. You know what I'm talking about. I did conquer it though. You know what else sucks? The medals, which you need to unlock levels you need to progress. They're not bad in the hubs and night levels, but can anyone explain why, in the speed-focused day levels, in the first Sonic game focused on such high speed, you're expected to stop and go into random side alleys for collectibles like this? Especially with how many medals you need, it's nuts. Bosses are mostly fine. I especially think the day bosses are really good at being centered around Sonic's speed. Then there's the big finale, Eggman Land. Now, I'm not sure if this is just for Unleashed, but dying and going back to a checkpoint doesn't reset the timer to what it was when you hit that checkpoint like in previous games. Because of that, I know how long Eggman Land took me. 45 minutes of infuriatingly hard level design. There's a final challenge, and then there's Eggman Land. At least the Egg Dragoon is the best Werehog fight, before a slog of a segment with the Gaia Colossus, and the really hard bits running along the Colossus to hit Dark Gaia. I really wanted to like this one, but it's just too fast and hard at times, and too slow at other times, with not enough in between. But maybe I'll like it better if I play it again. I'm willing to give it another shot in the future. It's mid. Yeah, not much to say for colors, it's just the most mid Sonic game I played. I played the original Wii version on Dolphin with a 60 FPS code since I read that was better than Color's Ultimate. Still doesn't stop it from being mid. The wisps are more of a level gimmick than a true gameplay gimmick since you only use them in designated spots and some of them just suck. It's also barely a 3D Sonic game and more of a 2D game most of the time. The final boss is just kinda lame. And don't get me started on the writing. I've been focusing on the gameplay for most of this video, but holy crap, is Colors trying so hard to be funny and failing so badly with jokes that go on for far too long. Tails' mistranslations of Yacker, Orbot explaining Sonic's joke to Cubot, Sonic's whole thing about that one boss ordering a clobbering, just ugh. Let's move on to something much better. Holy crap, this one's good. Generations is one of the quintessential Sonic games. For the most part, it does have a few flaws, but which game doesn't? The 2D stuff is even mostly good in Generations, so it doesn't ruin the game when about half of it is 2D classic Sonic stages. On the 3D side, this game is probably the best of the boost formula, some of the best functioning gameplay with some of the best sense of speed. The levels are great at revisiting past locations, and it's cool to see some of the reimaginings and new elements and sections added to keep them fresh. Although the final third starts to get a bit frustrating, and Planet Wisps sucks in both 2D and 3D. The whole section with the pink spike wisps is such a slog. The bosses are really cool at being almost completely new takes on the original fights. Metal Sonic has to be actually fought instead of just raced. The Death Egg robot is much more complex than the original, with hitting the back and baiting attacks to get to the head. Shadow is really focused on the race in order to get the energy cores to attack him. Perfect Chaos is more of a platforming challenge without Supersonic. Silver is a full chase boss that makes him look even cooler with his powers, and the Egg Dragoon is just a completely new fight since the original was fought as the Werehog. But then there's the Time Eater fight. I could barely tell if I was even speeding up or getting closer, it just felt aimless. But other than Planet Wisp and the Time Eater, Generations is fantastic, and probably one of the best intros into the franchise for potential new fans. I just started with Adventure to see the evolution, and also for chronological order. Speaking of which... I played one game out of release order, Shadow Generations. I actually spliced this one between parts of Sonic Generations. I played Sonic through the Shadow fight, then played Shadow through the cutscene about that fight, then went back to Sonic until the Time Eater, then finished Shadow, then fought the Time Eater. That's probably closest to chronological order. I'll also mention it here, before playing the Gens games, I watched the Dark Beginnings animation. Again, it's really good and adds even more to Shadow's character, more from Maria. Heck, there's even some expansion on the Gun Commander, who was finally canonically given the name Abraham Tower. And Omega steals the show with his moments, calling dibs and rolling his Gatling gun on the catwalk to rev it up. I love this murder bot. Anyways, back to the game. Shadow Gens is another of the best of the boost formula, with some extra spice thanks to Shadow's abilities. Very much in favor of giving him projectile all the time with Chaos Spear, and the implementation of true time-slowing chaos control was well done. The Doom powers were a pretty cool gimmick for this game, and thankfully they weren't too forced in. Most of the gameplay focuses on Shadow's base abilities, as well as a bit more Doom Spear and Doom Blast, which feel like they could be adapted into his base abilities for future games, since he's not getting Doom powers again. The boss fights here are really good. The Bio Lizard starts as a remake but then gets lots of new stuff, and is much less janky than the original. Metal Overlord has a cool completely new fight based around Doom Surf. Mephiles partly remakes his original fight but implements Doom Morph on the corruption surfaces, and Devil Doom is a great chase boss with a hype final phase. I just wish I did better at it when I played it. And can we talk about the story real quick? Ian Flynn cooked here. This is the best Shadow's been written in years. He smiled at Maria. He has a heart. I really hope Sega gets the memo from this in Movie 3 to stop trying to make Shadow into Flanderized Vegeta. Apparently not even Vegeta is that much of a rivalrous edgelord anymore. Lift the restrictions on how Shadow gets written in the games and comics and stuff, and let Ian cook. Shadow Generations is one of the best 3D Sonic games, and combined with Sonic Gens, the full Sonic X Shadow Generations package is one of the best as well. I skipped Lost World and went straight to Forces. Real quick, I read the prequel comics before playing Forces. They give a bit more insight into Infinite's origins and they're a quick read. I recommend them. I didn't mind this one. Yep, I didn't like Adventure 2, liked Shadow 05 and Sonic 06, didn't like Unleashed much, thought Colors was mid, and now I didn't mind Sonic Forces. I'm an absolute anomaly. The thing is, I'm hearing more people are coming around on Forces. For the most part, it's not offensively bad, just okay. Although Tails cowering to Chaos Zero when he previously fought Chaos 4 was offensively bad. Huge props to Ian for revealing Tails without taking the easy route of just retconning that scene out of existence. The Avatar is a really cool gimmick for this game, and a great way to officially endorse fan OCs. Here's my beta, Geeky the Cat. The Avatar also gets some neat gameplay with Grappling Hook and Wispun. I didn't use anything other than the basic Burst Wispun, but I'm sure the others are neat. Sonic's gameplay is fine, but the Sonic and Avatar team-up levels are the best. You get Sonic speed and the Avatar's extra tools. Although they also screwed up classic Sonic, he was fine in Generations, why is he so bad here? And Shadow's fine in episode Shadow, but just a reskin of Sonic. Level design is just fine across the board, a few better levels and a few worse, pretty average overall. Bosses are just fine as well, I think Infinites are probably the best. The final phase of the final boss took me forever for some reason. I have no idea why, it's like my boost wasn't speeding up enough. I don't know what else to say about Forces. It's almost mid, it has some good stuff and uses its unique gameplay elements more and better than Colors did. Now at this point, I took a break from 3D Sonic to focus on some side material, since we knew at the time that Frontiers took place after some upcoming comics. Which isn't the case anymore, thanks a lot for the confusion, Sega. So, let's check out some of that side material, starting with... I saved the IDW comics until after beating Forces, since they start very soon after the events of Forces, and I absolutely devoured the comics, binge reading all that were out at the time in just about 2 weeks. Ian Flynn, Evan Stanley, Daniel Barnes, and the rest of the team have made some incredible material here. I'm so glad it's been officially folded into canon, with Tangle being mentioned in Frontiers, and more recently Crossworlds having Tails mention the clean sweepstakes, Espio and Zaz mentioning their fight, Zavok mentioning Silver foiling his plans, and Tangle and Whisper gay up getting added to the roster. And as I was working on the script for this, Tangle and Whisper were just revealed to be in episode 3 of the Chaotix Case Files, finally getting official voice actors. A few specific things in the comics I wanted to mention. The Metal Virus was an awesome saga. Starline was a great villain who is totally returning the road to issue 100 because we didn't see his body. I like Clutch giving us more of a crime boss villain. Surgeon Kit's story is really interesting. The Deadly Six got much improved. Scrapnik Island was a great miniseries and an interesting direction for Mechasonic Mark II. Honestly, most of IDW is absolute gold. Except for the recent Sequin arc, Lunar got hyped up so much, but Salil's story turned out really rushed, and I feel like Salil's gonna be forgotten in the overall comic. But the rest of IDW is fantastic. The main numbered issues, the miniseries, the annuals, the one-shots, the classic era stuff. Sega, please stop segregating the classic era characters. They even changed the slightly modern Bark and Sonic Blitz into a classic design. Since IDW is so focused on characters, let's just go ahead and talk about my favorite Sonic characters in general right now. Top 5! Number 5, Whisper the Wolf. She's got a cool design, cool skills with her variable Wispon and team of 5 Wisps, and a tragic backstory, but it seems that with Mimic gone, she can finally move on. Number 4, Vector the Crocodile. He's a big guy and a bit loud, but he's chill and a great detective with a big heart, willing to work for free despite needing to pay the rent. I'm rooting for him to hook up with Vanilla and become the dad that stepped up for Cream. Dang, Milk the Rabbit went to find himself. Number 3, E123 Omega. The absolutely hilarious murderbot who cares only for sticking it to Eggman and proving his superiority over all other robots, though he's got respect for Gemerald and a true friendship with Team Dark is best seen in 06. In Crossworlds alone, he says he'll win and inform Sonic's next of kin, tells both Amy and Espio to cry about it, threatens to put a hatchet in Eggman's head, threatens regicide against Blaze, threatens to taxidermize Vector and roast him for not being able to get a date, acts as Shadow's hype man, agrees to help Big clear a pond of badniks, and has an apparent soft spot for Cream. He's amazing. Number 2, Shadow the Hedgehog. He was number 1 for a while, the ultimate lifeform and most popular character besides Sonic himself, with one of the best stories in the franchise. His tragic backstory, grief-fueled revenge plan, remembering what Maria really wanted and sacrificing himself to achieve it, coming back and trying to find himself, moving on from his past, his great arc about I will fight like I always have that unfortunately got wiped, and his learning to let go and keep moving on. Unfortunately, he hasn't been written as well in the comics, but here's hoping Sega loosens up on making him just edgy the hedgy and lets Ian cook. Number 1, Tangle the Lemur. Just seeing fan art of her puts a smile on my face, especially because most of it is focused on her being the goofiest, floofiest goober. Her stretchy tail is just begging to be a core gameplay mechanic in a full platformer, and she's got such a fun personality that's very similar to Luz Naceda from the Owl House, who's my current 3rd favorite character of all time. Tangle is a bit underdeveloped compared to a lot of the other IDW originals, but with Mimic dead and Whisper's arc pretty much wrapped up because of that, maybe Tangle can get some focus in development next. Sadly, my dream fan cast of Sarah Nicole Robles as Tangle because of her similar personality to Luce did not come true, but the official voice she does have is very good and has the same vibes. Alright, time for Frontiers? Not yet. I was taking a break until after IDW issue 83 to play Frontiers, since we knew Sage was making her comic debut in issue 84, so that means Frontiers took place between 83 and 84. Until we recently got confirmation that Sega changed their minds and the writers had to figure out a good spot to place Frontiers. It's between issues 67 and 68 now. So what did I do in the meantime? One of the most well-known parts of LEGO's Toys to Life game LEGO Dimensions was the Sonic content in Year 2, which was the main part of content I had never played before. Before this past summer, I had packs to get into every level in Adventure World except Sonic. But in the lead up to the 10th anniversary of Dimensions, I got the last of the packs I was missing, including the Sonic level pack, and played the entire game to 100% completion. Sonic Dimensions is an absolute marathon level, an original story taking Sonic through Green Hill Zone, Emerald Coast, the Death Egg, Metropolis Zone, Marble Zone, Labyrinth Zone, and back up to the Death Egg, with a final fight of Super Sonic against Chaos with the Elemental Keystone. There's definitely some Adventure 1 love here. They even chose to have Big as one of the few Sonic characters in the content. The Adventure World's a lot of fun too, with Chemical Plant, Carnival Night, Ice Cap, and more. And sure, there's no actual Genesis era music due to copyright issues, but the new tracks are bops that still fit the vibes. Sonic himself is a great adaptation of 3D Sonic into a LEGO game, even if it brings a bit of jank. He builds up his speed instead of going immediately at high speeds like previous LEGO game speedsters such as Flash Quicksilver, but you also have the spin dash to immediately shoot off. The homing attack works well and one-shots most enemies. It's fun to have Sonic fighting Daleks and such. It also turns into an air boost if there's nothing around a homing attack. Grind rails also work pretty well. They were designed for Sonic after all, though they let Legless use them as well. Sonic's just about at his best when running around the adventure worlds. He's one of the fastest LEGO speedsters, only behind Quicksilver, and he sticks to surfaces well when running, to the point where the loop-de-loops in the Sonic Adventure world aren't scripted. They also do something really interesting with the camera, where it rotates to keep him straight up from your view, so you get a tilted camera when running along sloped surfaces, and the camera goes through loops with him. You know, I can't help but wonder if Sonic in Dimensions was Sega testing the waters of Sonic in true open-world environments. Although they didn't carry over the unscripted loops, and with them being a bit janky during races, I can probably see why. But overall, TT Games had a real redemption arc in terms of Sonic games after they made Sonic 3D Blast and Sonic R.
You said I could trust you. You said you were a gamer. Bertley, I only play mobile games. No!
Yep, I got into the mobile games too. I started playing Sonic Dash in January 2025, and I've played enough to have almost everyone. The main characters I don't have are the crossovers and LEGO characters, Series Knuckles since they refused to bring him back, and I'm working on Valentine Rouge. I've also maxed out all the commons, some of the major characters who are rare or epic, Supersonic, and most of the separate characters from stuff like Secret Rings, Black Knight, or Prime. It's a pretty good endless runner, not much more to say. Then there's Sonic Forces Speed Battle. I started playing this one in August, and I'm currently at 77 characters out of the 136 in the game as I'm recording this, though 7 of those will never be obtainable again, and 8 won't be until the next movie recap. I like Speed Battle more than Dash since it's got more of a point to keep playing, and it's more fun than just running. I main Tangle since she's got a neat moveset with Tail Strike and Tail Spring. And here's an incomplete list of every character I hate to play against in this game. Metal Sonic and Metal 3.0 because they steal items. Anyone with a boomerang attack like Outlaw Shadow. Riders Rouge because of all the bat crackers. Every single Infinite because of all the illusion crap. Mephiles because everything he does steals items. Oni Mephiles because his lightning is impossible to avoid and he can disable your jump. Phantom Rider because of the Octopus Ink. Extreme Gear Supersonic because of the fan blowing you back. Neo Metal because of his big electric beam. Valhalla Surge because of those moving shields. Excalibur Sonic because his sword is impossible to avoid. Knuckles the Dread because of the cannons. Rusty Rose and Grim Sonic because of crossed wires. All the music characters because they disable your items. Anyone with moves that slow you down when trying to switch lanes. Anyone with moves that slow you down in general. Anyone with moves that make you unable to switch lanes, especially Ragnarok Silver. And both Movie Shadow and Movie Super Shadow for the absolute hell they create on the track with meteors. I love this game. Alright, time for the final main event. After the great Divergence animation giving focus to Knuckles, and the Convergence comic setting up the events, it's finally time for... Sonic Frontiers is probably my favorite Sonic game. It's not without problems, but it does so much good. Sega has been trying to put Sonic in an open world for years, with the adventure fields, Soliana hub areas, unleashed towns, and like I mentioned, LEGO Dimensions might have been a test as well. Frontiers proved why open world Sonic is something that needed to happen. A chance to put Sonic's speed to very good use and finally let him be as free as the wind. Running around the Starfall Islands is a ton of fun, especially if you can use the elements of the environment to your advantage, or break up the runs with quick platforming segments to get stuff like memory tokens, or quickly beat up some enemies before running off again. The combat focus is also pretty nice, even though most of the moves you unlock are kinda pointless and just flashy for the sake of it. The cyberspace levels are my least favorite part of the game. Some people don't like the physics in them, but I just don't like the whole style. While Sonic is meant to be fast, what I like about Frontiers is that you can go fast, but you also have the freedom to go at your own pace. You can run around and do the little puzzles to map out the islands, gather up seeds and cocoa to boost your skills, or just run around for the heck of it. Or go fishing with Big. I started fishing on Ares Island, started to abuse it on Chaos, and abused the heck out of it on Arenos, just to avoid cyberspace levels. I'm playing an open world Sonic game, I'm gonna have my fun in the open world, dang it! The Titan fights are an absolute highlight. Beating the crap out of enormous robots is Supersonic with the golden hedgehog flying all over the place and lasers shooting everywhere and Kellen Quinn metalcore blaring in my ears or Mary Kirk Holmes for Supreme. It is glorious and I had a huge smile on my face for every fight. And then there's the end. Yeah, that base game final boss is bad. It breaks every rule of final boss design by completely changing the gameplay style to one that was barely used before. Which, by the way, was a total ripoff of the final boss of Hat Kid Steals the Declaration of Independence 2, GoldenEye of the Shapeshifters. I'm not even joking, it's the exact same deal. You fight a monologuing celestial body in a shmup segment, and that mod released in 2021. For shame, Sega. Thankfully, the Final Horizon fixed the final boss, and gave us a whole new final island where we finally get to play as Sonic's stupid friends in a 3D game again. And they break the game wide open. Amy and Knuckles glide over and around everything, and Tails just unlocks the Cyclone to fly wherever he wants. Although Knuckles' climbing is so janky, anyone who remembers that one Map Coco climbing challenge in the northeast corner of the map should know exactly what I mean. And then there's the trials. I fully admit that the towers were too frustrating to climb without switching to easy mode for more balloons and springs. Then the actual trials were pretty easy. But then there's Master King. Yeah, no, I tried on medium but was losing too many rings in the first phase. I'm not doing that bullcrap above easy. At least the new final boss wasn't that hard actually, even on hard difficulty, and it was hype as frick! I'd like to talk about the story as well. After quite a few years of lackluster or outright bad writing for the mainline games due to Pontiac and Graf, Sega finally let a game be written by someone who actually cares about this franchise, and Ian Flint did a great job here. Sure, maybe there's a bit too many references, but it helps cement so many things as definitive canon. And then there's the focus on the main cast, re-railing Amy, Knuckles, and Tails into the new best versions of themselves, as well as showing a great new side to Sonic that will never give up on helping his friends, no matter what happens to him. Sage is a great new addition who will help to humanize Eggman, and the Egg memos are great for giving him more as well. Between Frontiers and Shadow Gens, plus the rewrites to Base Generation's story which cleans some things up, I have full faith if Ian is the lead writer for the games going forward. Just maybe lighten up on the references a touch. I like nods to the past, but don't make it feel like set up for Family Guy cutaway gags. Anyways, Sonic Frontiers is my favorite 3D Sonic, and I really hope that beyond Whitespace and Shadow Gens, they continue to expand upon the Open Zone formula in the future. So, what's next? Well, already in this new year, we've gotten Sage's great debut into IDW and an interesting dynamic with Bell, plus more teases for this mystery villain in the road to issue 100. Let's be real folks, like it or not, it's Startline. There's not enough time to introduce someone new and have it be meaningful for issue 100, and no other previous villain makes sense here. The mystery for me is what's meant to go in that big hole in the coffin with the Chaos Emeralds. My bet's on the Phantom Ruby and that he's going to get infinite out of it. Sonic Movie 4 comes out next year, hopefully Amy and Metal will be done justice, and I have faith after the previous movies. Also hoping Shadow will continue to be done well when he inevitably returns, especially since he's most likely to be leading that untitled Sonic Universe event film in 2028. And I'm excited to see even more characters get adapted into this CGI live-action hybrid. I just wish Paramount didn't have their current CEO, or that Sega could switch to a different company to make the movies. I've seen some of the leaks for Sonic Eclipse as the next big 3D game. Won't comment too much since leaks can always be wrong, and there's a lot of unlikely stuff in these recent leaks. Also, multiple leaks were mentioning Tangle being in it as an NPC and being voiced by Erica Harlicker, but with Tangle and Whisper making their voice debuts in episode 3 of the Chaotix Case Files, which has been really fun so far, we know that's not the case, unless Tangle has 2 voice actors for some reason. I'm not planning to play any of the 2D games, or the other 3D games such as Lost World. I've got other things to do, and those games don't interest me. But I have caught up on the overall story, thanks to the wiki and plenty of YouTube content. I've been watching lots of Char I5, Game Apologist, Chow Mix, and more for a wide variety of content. And I'm thinking about playing Cross Worlds, at least once Tangle and Whisper are unlocked. But I did it. After over a year, I can definitively say that by my own arbitrary requirements I hold only myself to, I've become a Sonic fan. I've developed such a respect for this franchise, such a love for its characters and stories, and I'm excited to see what's next. Whatever they've got planned, I'm ride or die for this series now. There's been ups, there's been downs, but, well, I'll leave this one to Sonic Team.
Beginning of this one-way dream.
I'm the Geeky Gamer. See ya!